All right. That wraps up week 4. Now we're starting to get an idea of who these teams actually are as we're a third of the way through the season. All right. This is the recap. Let's go.
We doing everything they talk about. You know I'm everything a boss about. Not putting work and gotta toss them out. I'm really biting, they just barking out. I'm really riding, they just parking now. His street, what to talk about. See the big H when I'm walking.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Base Coverage presented to you by our partners over at Knoah Teamwear. And I'm your host, the one and only Jamal Clay. Thank you guys for tuning in. And per usual, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, share this video with a friend, and let's keep this ELF ball going, all right? Hey, we just wrapped up week 4 of the ELF. We're about a third of the way through the season. And I think right now we kind of have an idea of who these teams actually are, their identity, as we break into the meat and potatoes of the season, the halfway mark of the season, the middle part of the season where the grind really happens. All right. So I don't want to waste too much of your time, but we're gonna recap this past weekend and talk about some of the games. So. All right, first game we want to dive into. The Enthroners traveled to Rustloff to play the Panthers. The Panthers are hot right now, and Turbo Tate has no signs of slowing down. The Enthroners came into this ball game after the news of releasing Gerard Evans and going in a different direction. We're still waiting to see who that new quarterback's going to be. They started their homegrown quarterback, who I didn't think played that bad for his first debut. Obviously, this is a league where there's a lot of talent on the field, and I think they held their own. It was, the one thing about the Enthroners is, yes, they're losing, but at least, they're putting up a good amount of points. I mean, 33 points, you lost by 30. Obviously, you get it, but putting up 33 points in the current situations you're in, it still shows some fight that the Enthroners have. So. Kudos to them. Rustloff, they moved to 3-1. Outside of the Berlin game, we're gonna head to a part of the season where we're gonna see, all right, who the Panthers really are. Are they pretenders? Are they contenders? Right? Are you gonna be able to beat the Berlin Thunder? Are you gonna be able to beat the Vienna Vikings? Are you gonna be able to beat the Hamburg Sea Devils again? Those are the games they're gonna have to win, because I believe they're one of about 7 teams that's gonna be fighting for at least 3 spots when it comes down to the wire. So kudos to the Rustloff Panthers. They win this game at home and they take care of business. Next game we got the Leipzig Kings versus the champs, the Vienna Vikings. Going into this game, the Vikings have one of the top rushing attacks in the league. I thought if the Kings had a chance, they had to do 2 things. They had to slow down the rush. So Lance Leata, Zetterberg had to, do their part and slow down the rush for the Vienna Vikings, but also they got to put up points. This is the thing about the Kings is I believe the Kings can actually be contenders, but the only thing the Kings struggle with is putting up enough points when it's needed to be able to compete with these teams. They're not going to be able to win those high scoring battles. And if you're gonna want to get into the playoffs, you're gonna have to beat these teams. I believe. They got a lot of skilled guys, but again, they're going to be searching for points and chasing for points throughout this whole season, and that's what we saw here. However, heading into the first half, they did have this game a little bit under control. At one point, this was a 5-0 game before the Vikings had scored, before going into halftime, and then obviously they opened it up a little bit. So again, in order for the Kings to be real contenders, they have to put up some points. The Vikings are kind of making statement wins right now, right? Their last 2 games that they had, even though it was against Prague and Leipzig, but they're putting up points, and they're taking care of business, which is what they actually have to do, and what they need to do. So we'll see. I think the real test when it comes to the Vikings is Rustloff's going to be somewhat of a test, but I think the Raiders is going to be their biggest test. Obviously with that rivalry and everything that goes into that game, and we're gonna see if the Vikings can get through the East without any problems heading into the playoffs. Obviously they're a top 2 team in the league at the moment, But the champs, they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's taking care of business, and that's taking care of business. So the champs win 47-14. Next one we got on tap. Paris Musketeers went to Frankfurt and lost. I should have followed my gut on this earlier in the week. I was heavy on Frankfurt, but the hesitancy of Jacob Sutherland made me switch to Paris, and I thought this was a position where Paris could bounce back after that big loss versus the Rhine Fire. Well, I was sadly mistaken. The one thing I'm noticing with Paris is that they just make it seem so hard to win games, so hard to score points. And watching the game, it just feels like it's so hard for them to play football, right? Frankfurt, that first game against the Rhine Fire, that was an aberration. I think, couple games under the belt. Next time they play Rhine, we'll see what happens. But Frankfurt are a good team. I like them heading into the season. Again, I didn't know the status of Jacob Sutherland in this game, which backed me away from them. But Frankfurt's a good team. That defense is starting to click a little bit, and we'll see what happens. Shout out to Steve Cluley. He came in and performed well. Reese Horn performed well. He had a couple big touchdowns. And we'll see what Frankfurt's made of heading into this part of the season where they're going to be playing a lot of conference games. But this was a great win for Frankfurt, and kudos to them. But Paris, man, the crazy thing about Paris is that they came in the season with so much hype, and they have a lot of skill on their team, but they're just not putting it together. And like I said, they just make it so hard to watch them because they should be way more talented, way more skilled, and way more better than what they're showing on the screen. So we'll see. They're at home next week versus the Hamburg Sea Devils, who I believe is starting to pick up the momentum, similar to last year where they had a slow start. But they're starting to pick up the momentum, and you can see them starting to gel. So it's gonna be another rough one for Paris, but it's not looking good right now for the Musketeers. So Frankfurt wins this one 30-13. Here we go. This was the First Down Magazine Athletes Forum game of the week. The Stuttgart Surge and the Raiders of Tyrol. This was, a lot of people don't like a 6-3 matchup because there's a lot of defense. But as a former defensive player, this was beautiful to watch. First of all, I don't think a lot of people realize how much pressure is on a defense, to play in these types of games, because one mistake either way and the scoreboard is running up, right? So the fact that these two defenses played so well, kudos to them. The thing with the Raiders, they gave up the one and only big play of the game, which led to a Lewis Guyer touchdown, right? But offensively, I'm a little concerned offensively because I felt like they were forcing a lot of things to Sandro Platzgummer, who unfortunately got hurt in this game. We don't know the status of it's a lower body injury, but we know the status of it. Jarvis McClan was non-existent, and that's a kudos to Stuttgart for not giving up the big play. 2, keeping everything in front. 3, not letting the Raiders get into a rhythm, right? They couldn't establish a run game. They couldn't, set up their plays for later in the game because they couldn't get anything going. Stuttgart literally kept every playmaker in check for the Raiders. And I said this before. The one thing about the Stuttgart Surge is they're going to make you play the full 60, right? They're going to make you play from the first quarter to the last the last seconds of the game. And if you're not ready to come and play that type of ball each week, it's gonna be a long Saturday or Sunday for you, because this Surge team is different. And it's the Jordan Newman effect from what people are telling me, is that he's gonna rally the troops and he's gonna make his teams play the full 60. So it's a grind to play against the Surge. They go to 3-0, number 1 in the conference, and they got a big one next week because they're playing a team with a similar DNA in the Munich Ravens, another team that plays the full 60. So we'll see what happens. But I feel like each week we're learning a lot more about the Surge and, multiple different ways that they could win. But this was a great win for them in the conference and where they stand. So the Surge win this one 6-3 over the Raiders. Here we go. Munich Ravens and the Barcelona Dragons. Barcelona is a team right now that is very dynamic on offense, right? It's Connor Miller or bust at this point. This team had about 0 rushing yards, I think, 3/4 into the game.
Another one. Another one. Another one.
Right. And I don't know. And it's definitely a lack of attempts. And they're relying on Connor to, be the Zach Edwards of last year. And yeah, can he do it? Yes, but he's not that type of guy too. Zach was a little bit more mobile and can create with his feet. And Connor's literally gonna sit in the pocket and try to eat you alive. So they need to establish more of a run game. And I think we saw something when they played the Raiders is that they got beat up front. And Munich did the exact same thing to them and beat them up front. So Barcelona's going to struggle when it comes to that aspect of playing teams that got a strong defensive line. But if they're gonna want to stay in this race again, there's probably a group of 7 teams that are gonna be fighting for 3 spots. If they want to stay in that race, they got to win these games. They got to split these types of games, especially when the game's at home. Otherwise, because it'll be a lot harder on the road. Barcelona falls to 2-2. Munich, on the other hand, this is a team that's getting better and better each week since their week 1 loss versus the Raiders. This is another team, right? This is another Munich. Munich right now is probably one of the most dangerous teams in the league because, along with the search, they make you play the full 60. And Munich is a team that can score in bunches and run up the score, but they're not going to get away from where they are. So, again, you're going to have to defend the run. You're going to have eye discipline. You're going to have to second contain on QB boots and sprint outs. You're going to have to find a way to keep Markel Castle in check. All right. So, that's why next week is going to set up a beautiful matchup when Munich plays the Surge in Munich. That's another home game. And shout out to those fans because they're getting another fantastic matchup. So those are 2 teams that are thriving at the right spot. Munich gets this win 39-15 over the Barcelona Dragons. All right, I'll keep this one quick. The Guards versus Milan Seamen. I knew this game wasn't going to go well for the Guards because the Guards can't score. On the other hand, Milan, all they do is score. They just can't stop anyone. Well, the Guards couldn't stop anyone, and they couldn't score. And it seemed like the Milan Seamen could score, and they were stopping the Guards. All right, it's ugly for the Guards right now. Jordan Barlow got ejected. That game got a little scrappy. Switzerland and Italy, even from the times where I played for the Broncos, they've always struggled against Milan. Nothing changes here. Milan wins this game 32-0. And one guy I do want to give a shout out to is Juan Calderon. This guy was 8 catches, 147 yards, a touchdown. This guy is the Lewis Geyer of the future. And what do I mean by that? This guy potentially could win Rookie of the Year, could potentially, at this rate, maybe receive offers from other teams next year if Milan can't keep him. But this guy is definitely making a name of himself, and this guy is making some money. So kudos to him. Milan wins 132 to zip. Next. All right. We want to talk about teams that could be trending in different directions real quick. The Berlin Thunder and the Hamburg Sea Devils. Berlin is a team that is frustrating. All right, they're like the Dallas Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys?
All right, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. They're a team that, will play games tough and win the games you think they're not supposed to win and lose the games you think they're supposed to win. All right, this game, I didn't think Mr. Malik Stanley was going to go off, but bro had 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, ended the game with 4 touchdowns. And Hamburg is a team that, their identity is of who they were in the past is starting to show in this year's team. They're a team that's always gonna fight, always gonna play to the whistle, but they're a team that's gonna trying to beat you up physically, and that's what they did against Berlin. Donovan Isom out with a lower body injury. We'll see how long that happens, and that can be a big effect for the Thunder, especially heading into next week versus the Kings, who have good defense. But Hamburg is a team that, hey, they put up a fight versus Paris, right? And they had a loss versus the Panthers in week 1, but you see them win against the Berlin Thunder. You see them winning versus the Cologne Centurions. They're a team that's grinding it out too. So we'll see what they had to say. But ultimately, it was a Preston Hare and Malik Stanley show today as they connected for four TDs. So shout out to the Hamburg Sea Devils winning 37-17. All right, this one's quick. All right, Ryan Fire, 42-0 with Cologne Centurions. Fire are rolling. Jadrian Clark, front runner for MVP right now. They did lose a couple guys, I believe, in Mentor and Robitaille might be out. I'm not sure how long, but based on the reports I'm seeing, it doesn't look good. So we'll see what happens there. But it seems like the only thing that's going to slow the Fire down or put the Fire out at this point is themselves. All right, and injury. So we'll see what happens. They win the conference one. They win the Derby. All right, listen, week 4. All right, that's a wrap. We're heading into week 5 now. All right, week 5 now. We're gonna start to see. We're gonna start to see the beginning of who is real and who's not. What do I mean by that? All right, you're starting to play some teams twice. You're starting to see a similar opponent. This is where great coaching comes in. This is where the great athletes or the great players, start to take control of the league. Through film work, through prep work, through taking your business during the week. So we'll see what's going to happen. I tell you what, I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to look forward now as I'm giving you guys the heads up game of the week. But this Munich and the Surge game is going to say a lot about the Central. If Munich can pull this off, the Central is a mess. All right, the Central is a mess. Is a mess, and it's crazy and it's cool, and we're all going to appreciate it going forward. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is the recap. All right, we'll see you guys on Friday as we preview week 5 in the ELF.